In Guadalajara, Mexico, we meet Guadalupe, a beautiful young brunette with eyes and hair as black as night. She is in a relationship with a young man named Augustin, who is tall, fair-skinned, with black hair and blue eyes. They seem very involved and happy together. Guadalupe was deeply in love with Augustin, and their relationship had already lasted 3 years. Guadalupe was studying to become a fashion designer and worked hard to pay for her university by selling empanadas and juices. Empanadas are savory pastries shaped like hearts, filled with shredded chicken or minced meat, typical of the region. Augustin, on the other hand, was also a student, though he hated his typical job as a street sweeper, which he despised. In his free time, he spent money on going to the gym and taking care of his health and body. He rarely bought gifts for his girlfriend. It wasn't that Guadalupe cared much, but a gift could be a nice indulgence once in a while. One day, during a casual date at a plaza, Guadalupe asked somewhat embarrassedly, "Love, when are we getting married? I hope we can be husband and wife soon." Augustin, feeling ashamed, replied, "Guadalupe, please be patient. When things get better and life smiles at us, I'll take you to the altar, and we'll be happy." They ended up kissing, but deep down, Augustin wasn't really interested in marrying Guadalupe. What he truly wanted was to escape poverty quickly and not be trapped. He liked Guadalupe, but he couldn't see a future with her because she was just a dreamy girl who believed she could become a designer by selling empanadas and juices on the streets. Things would change one day when Augustin was sweeping the street. Out of nowhere, a very chic and elegant woman, who seemed to come from a high social position, noticed Augustin. Despite his disheveled appearance, the woman realized he was handsome. She introduced herself as Rosala, a wealthy woman from high society. Though she was only 15 years older than Augustin, she maintained a slim figure and a beautiful angelic look. As a token of gratitude, the woman pulled out a card with her name and address and handed Augustin a sum of $600 as payment, which left Augustin completely thrilled, feeling like he had hit the jackpot. Guadalupe worked hard selling her empanadas, using the money she earned with such difficulty to pursue her dreams. She was orphaned by both parents but raised by her loving uncles as if she were their own daughter. They admired her efforts to succeed in life and encouraged her dreams, also helping her invest as best they could. Guadalupe had a close relationship with her cousins, her uncle's children, who considered her their heart sister. Over time, Guadalupe began to notice that Augustin was growing more distant and hardly visited her anymore. She called Augustin to find out what was happening, but her calls always went to voicemail. What Guadalupe didn't know was that Augustin was beginning a romance with Rosala. The disgustingly rich woman showered the poor boy with expensive gifts like jackets, watches, and even a motorcycle, which began to change Augustin's demeanor. Seeing all the luxury in Rosala's mansion made Augustin realize what he could have. One day, Rosala firmly told Augustin, "Listen, Augustin. Let go of that mediocre girl who won't give you any future. You're wasting your precious time with her. I can give you everything you want. I can give you a king's life." Augustin timidly replied, "Calm down, darling. Give me time to break up with Guadalupe without any drama or scandal. I've been with her since I was 17, and it won't be easy to break up suddenly." Rosala agreed to Augustin's request. One unexpected day, as Guadalupe was walking down the street, she was surprised to see Augustin with a motorcycle, wearing leather clothes and a very expensive watch. It seemed strange to Guadalupe, so she approached Augustin and politely asked, "Love, you look amazing. How did you manage to afford all this luxury? Especially with a street sweeper's salary, which isn't that much." "Love, unexpected things can happen. If you have a little patience, maybe we'll have a decent life later on and get married." Augustine replied with a smile. Guadalupe asked Augustine if she could ride with him on his motorcycle, but Augustine refused, not wanting to risk damaging the motorcycle. Guadalupe felt embarrassed and thought Augustine was being rude, and she told him so. Augustine reassured her that she was overreacting and asked her to be patient, saying it was all for a greater good. Guadalupe tried to remain calm about the situation and decided not to make a big deal out of it. Every day, Augustine and Rosala's parallel romance became more passionate, making promises of love. Augustine loved indulging in Rosala's world where everything seemed incredible, swimming in the pool, taking care of his health. Rosala was accustomed to seducing guys and taking them to places where she could get whatever she wanted from them. Augustine accidentally discovered the truth when he entered Rosala's room without permission to clean it and found a small book that looked like a Bible, with gold-decorated pages. When he opened it, Augustine was shocked to see several photos of guys inside, blondes, brunettes, and redheads. It was then that Augustine realized these were Rosala's past conquests and began to suspect his wealthy lover. He left the secret book where he found it and pretended not to know anything. Augustine was preparing a counterplan in case Rosala tried to dump him or replace him with another guy. However, one unexpected day, Rosala cornered Augustine emotionally and said, "Listen, Augustine. I really like you and I want to know if you'll break up with that poor, mediocre girl you're with. Will you marry me?" Augustine, surprised by Rosala's stance, replied, "Are you sure about this? If not, I won't break up with Guadalupe for anything. You know that." Rosala assured him of her decision and vowed not to give up on her goal. Despite being rich and enjoying pleasures, Rosala proposed to Augustine because she liked him, though Augustine was torn. He had feelings for Guadalupe but was also deeply involved in the life of luxury and wealth that his wealthy lover provided. Augustine accepted Rosala's proposal and promised to break up with Guadalupe over the weekend. Rosala smiled, finally having the guy in her web like a spider catching its prey. Augustine, however, was already aware that he could be discarded. Quickly, he went to a notary to secure a prenuptial agreement without Rosala knowing. Despite being poor, Augustine had intelligence and cunning, whereas Rosala was just a woman of high society who believed in enjoying life, thinking that in the end, everyone turns to dust and disappears. Rosala had everything money could provide. At the end of the week, as he promised, Augustine goes to Guadalupe's house. Just as he assured his lover, he calls Guadalupe and, straightforwardly, tells her, "Listen, Guadalupe. I'm going to be honest with you. Our life together has no future. You selling empanadas on the street and believing you'll become a fashion designer, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to wait around anymore. I want to be direct and clear, I want to end our relationship." Guadalupe feels deeply embarrassed by Augustine's words and replies, "My love. Why do you want to do this? I can't believe you're throwing away our relationship like this." But Augustine is resolute, "Listen, Guadalupe. I don't love you anymore. I don't see a future with you. I want something quicker and easier. And like I told you, I want to end it all. I've fallen for someone else and I don't love you anymore." Hearing Augustine's words, Guadalupe is outraged. With tears in her eyes, she slaps Augustine across the face, leaving him stunned. Guadalupe retorts, "You're despicable, Augustine. You're worthless. I dreamed of having a family with you, and what do? You betray and deceive me." Augustine responds seriously, "I'm sorry for everything that's happening, but life goes on. Find yourself another man who truly loves you and makes you happy. I'm not the man for you. I think you should move on and forget about me. I'm in love with another woman and I want to move forward and be happy with her." Indignant, Guadalupe demands to know who this woman is that ended their life and relationship. Augustin tells her it doesn't matter and warns Guadalupe not to do anything against her, as it would only cause trouble. Guadalupe pleads with Augustin not to break up with her, expressing willingness to forgive his betrayal and move forward. But Augustin responds sternly, "Guadalupe, don't be ridiculous. I've already told you I'm in love with someone else. You sound like one of those crazy, emotionally dependent women. Have some self-respect and stop begging for scraps of love. It's ridiculous, Guadalupe." And Guadalupe, very sad, responded, "So I'm ridiculous for wanting to fight for the man of my life? Is that what you think? Fine then. Go ahead with that woman who's gotten into your head and see if it works out between you. I'm letting this damn relationship go to hell." Augustin then sarcastically replied, "So that's your love for me? Fine. Let's each go our own way then. I'm moving forward, thinking about my future. So be it. I wish you all the best. Goodbye." Augustin hopped on his motorcycle and rode off, leaving Guadalupe completely shattered and falling into a deep depression. Her uncles and cousins did everything they could to pull Guadalupe out of the emotional abyss she found herself in. Meanwhile, Augustin was at Rosala's mansion, informing her that he had ended things with Guadalupe and that the path was clear. Rosala was delighted that Augustin had finally left behind what she referred to as Guadalupe's residue, and with a big smile, she said to Augustin, "Congratulations, my dear Augustin. This calls for a celebration. We'll get married soon, 6 months from now. How does that sound?" Augustin returned the smile, saying, "Yes, love. Guadalupe is no longer a problem. She even slapped me. But I understand her. Poor thing." Rosala replied sarcastically, "Don't worry, dear. That girl will forget about you soon enough. She's just a poor girl from the suburbs. But enough about her, let's move forward, my love." They celebrated and raised a toast. Although Augustin showed Rosala that he was happy his relationship with Guadalupe was over, deep down he regretted breaking up with her, but he believed that survival and a good life were more important. At that moment, Augustin took advantage of Rosala being drunk and asked her to sign a document, telling her it was important for their future. Trusting but intoxicated, Rosala naively and foolishly signed the paper Augustin gave her. Augustin then carried Rosala to her room, holding her in his arms and putting her to sleep. He quickly took the document, which was the prenuptial agreement. 6 months had passed. With the help of her family, Guadalupe had managed to overcome the loss with great effort, holding on to the hurtful words Augustin had said to her. She was still deeply wounded. To rid herself of any lingering feelings for Augustin, she burned the few gifts and photos she had of him and refocused on her fashion design course. She had decided to look at life through a different lens. One day, while reading the newspaper, Guadalupe saw a photo of Augustin and Rosala announcing their wedding. Seeing the photo, Guadalupe said to herself, "So that's the woman that jerk left me for. Now I see what he always wanted, money. Let's hope he makes the most of it. I realize now that guy was never meant for me." Initially, Guadalupe wanted to create a scene on Augustin and Rosala's wedding day, but she chose to let it go. With dedication and effort, Guadalupe completed her fashion design course, and her uncles and cousins were very proud. Guadalupe was now starting to reap the rewards of her hard work. Over time, working at a fashion gallery, Guadalupe met another designer named Sebastián. Upon seeing Guadalupe, Sebastián was amazed by her. He was a natural redhead with an athletic build and brown eyes. Without wasting time, Sebastián began using his charm to seduce Guadalupe. However, she politely rejected Sebastian's advances and preferred to remain just friends. Sebastian understood her decision and accepted it, deciding to be only her friend. Yet, the young designer was not willing to give up and would do anything to win Guadalupe's affection. Meanwhile, Augustin and Rosala finally got married, though not in a grand ceremony as many wealthy people do, but in a simple and private affair with few guests and acquaintances. Augustin had invited some of his acquaintances to the wedding, but they refused to attend out of solidarity with Guadalupe, knowing the deception he had inflicted upon her. This disappointment greatly affected Augustin when he realized they weren't there. One day, with all his courage, Sebastian decides to confess his feelings to Guadalupe and firmly says, "Guadalupe, ever since I saw you, I can't get you out of my head. There's something I'd like to ask you. Will you be my girlfriend? If you say no, I understand. We can still be friends." Guadalupe is touched by Sebastian's request and declaration, and she timidly responds, "Look at yourself, Sebastian. You seem like a really nice guy. But I had a boyfriend once and it was a complete disappointment. So, I don't trust men anymore and I'm afraid of getting disappointed again." In a kind and polite manner, Sebastian says, "Guadalupe, I don't know what happened in your past, but whatever it is, you can open up and tell me. I'm all ears. Tell me about it. I'll listen." So Guadalupe tells Sebastian her entire story about her relationship with Augustin, his betrayal, the abandonment she endured, and the sadness she had to bear in the following months, along with her complete lack of hope in believing in love. Sebastian responds affectionately to his beloved, "Guadalupe, I understand what you must have gone through. But believe me, not all men are the same. Your ex-boyfriend is a complete coward who has no idea what a great woman he lost. I promise you, if you give me a chance, you won't regret it. My feelings for you are genuine and true. I'll prove it to you through actions, not just words. Please think about it carefully." When Guadalupe hears Sebastian's words and sees a genuine and sincere look in his eyes, she decides to give him a chance, and romance begins to blossom between Sebastian and Guadalupe. Their passion for fashion brings them together as they create clothing collections and work as a team. Each day they grow closer, going out, playing, having fun, and going on dates in public squares. Meanwhile, things also start off well between Augustin and Rosala, but soon fate will throw a bucket of water onto Augustin's life that he will never forget. 2 years into their relationship, Sebastian decides to propose to Guadalupe, and the excited woman accepts, much to the joy of her uncles and cousins. Guadalupe finally manages to definitively forget Augustin, and 4 months later, Guadalupe and Sebastian marry in a church ceremony. 3 months into their marriage, Guadalupe becomes pregnant, which makes Sebastian very happy and joyful. When the pregnancy completes, they have a boy whom they name Sebastian Jr. As for Augustin and Rosala, they lived well together for a whole year, enjoying their relationship. However, Augustin soon discovers a not-so-good side of his wife. The following year, Rosala starts completely ignoring Augustin and no longer pays attention to him. She even sneaks out without any explanation, causing suspicions to rise in Augustin. Whenever he questions Rosala, they begin to argue and fight after just 2 years of marriage. Rosala always reminds him that everything belongs to her and he has nothing. Augustin endures his wife's humiliations until one day he decides to follow her to see where she goes. That's when he catches Rosala chatting and having lunch very animatedly with another guy. Augustin is completely shocked to see it, so he takes out his phone to film it, just to have proof. At first, everything seemed calm, but when Augustin sees Rosala kissing the guy on the lips, his world comes crashing down. He thought Rosala really loved him, and remembering the photos of men in Rosala's gold Bible, he realized that his wife only liked men and then discarded them. When Augustin gets home, he decides to use strategy instead of his fists to make Rosala pay for her infidelity. When Rosala arrives at her mansion, Augustin greets her, but she ignores him and barely notices him, so she goes to her room, takes off her clothes, takes a shower, and goes to bed. After Rosala has left, Augustin decides to go through his wife's things again and finds hidden in a corner of her jewelry box some tickets to a very fancy hotel. That's when Augustin realizes where his wife is going to spend the night and decides to follow Rosala. When he arrives at the hotel and sees Rosala and her lover enter, he waits for her to ask for the key. Dressed well and eager to see the place, the staff thinks he's just another guest and doesn't mind letting him in. When he sees the room number where Rosala and her lover have gone, the hotel employee at the desk doesn't let him in, but Augustin offers money to the employee to open the door because it's his wife inside. Quickly grabbing the spare key, Augustin enters and sees Rosala and her lover doing what they shouldn't be doing, naked as they came into the world. At that moment, Augustin pulls out his mobile phone and films them for a minute, then puts his phone away. Then Augustin walks in, clapping loudly, and shouts, "Very nice, my dear Rosala. I gave up everything for you, thinking you loved me, and now you thank me? Now I know where you go on your escapades." Rosala and her lover quickly covered themselves with the sheets, and Rosala nervously replied, "Augustin, what are you doing here and how did you find out about this place?" At that moment, Augustin replied, "How I found out doesn't matter. Now everyone will know who you really are. Dear. What a fool I was to leave Guadalupe for someone like you." Rosala tried to persuade Augustin not to do anything because she had influence and he was a nobody, but Augustin didn't care and already had the cards in his favor. When he got home, Augustin packed his things, and when Rosala arrived home right behind him, they got into an unpleasant argument with lots of jabs and accusations. Then Rosala revealed the truth and said, "Want to know, Augustin? I'm sick of you and you drive me crazy. You're nothing but another toy I've played with. Although I have to admit, you were the only one I really liked. I've had enough and thrown you away. If you want to file for divorce, I'll give it to you without any problems. You'll just leave empty-handed and with no rights to anything." And Augustin replied indignantly, "Well done, dear Rosala. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I left the woman I loved for you, and this is how you repay me. What a shame." And Rosala retorted boldly, "I've already told you, if you want a divorce, ask for it. I'm not going to stop having fun and living my life intensely just to take care of you. Get with the program, buddy. Things are not as you think. I'm not going to extinguish my fire for you." And Augustin, with a serious expression, replied, "We'll see about that, dear. But rest assured, I won't leave empty-handed. You can't imagine the surprises that await you." While Augustin and Rosala argued, Augustin packed his few things and left the house. Rosala was unimpressed and believed she could have it all because she was wealthy, but she had no idea about the speech Augustin would give her. Rosala signed the divorce papers without hesitation, but soon received a notice of asset division in case of infidelity. Rosala couldn't imagine what Augustin was planning, and when the court date arrived, it was there that she discovered the surprise. Rosala had signed a prenuptial agreement stating that in case of infidelity by either spouse, assets would be divided equally between them. Rosala never imagined she had signed such an agreement, and she tried every means to challenge it, but it was her signature and there was no way to annul it. She only remembered what she had done when she was drunk, but by then it was too late. Augustin had presented evidence of Rosala's infidelity in court, and fearing her reputation would be ruined and not wanting it to become public, Rosala reluctantly accepted the agreement. She decided to give Augustin $12 million, a mansion, and a car under the condition that these images not be made public. Augustin accepted the agreement, and Rosala signed the papers. After finalizing the terms of the separation agreement, Rosala had one last conversation with Augustin and replied, "Make the most of it. Let's see how far you get with this. I never would have imagined you were so underhanded, miserable, and deceitful. You practically disgust me." And Augustin responded seriously, "You have nothing to complain about. I only took what was rightfully mine. Moreover, you still have enough money to enjoy yourself for generations. I was in love with you and you've only been married for a short time, and now you do this to me. I'm sorry, darling. Be grateful it didn't come out in the media. This is our last conversation. Goodbye." So Augustin left and went to his new mansion, and it was then that he began to reminisce about the nostalgia he felt for Guadalupe, believing she still loved him. Now that he had a good fortune, he thought it would be fair to make it up to Guadalupe for all the suffering he had caused her, and he believed she might come back to him because Augustin realized he had never stopped loving her, and Rosala was just a passing flame. Until Augustin decided to search for Guadalupe on his own and find out how she was doing, he called her and saw that he was blocked, even on social media. Through a fake account, Augustin saw Guadalupe's profile and saw that she was married with a child. This left Augustin completely devastated, and he saw that she had actually become a fashion designer and was launching clothing collections that were a huge success. Augustin gathered his courage and went to the fashion design company where Guadalupe worked. He waited in reception for Guadalupe, and it was at that moment when he saw Guadalupe emerge from a room, his eyes lighting up at how beautiful, radiant, and perfect she looked, preparing his speech to win back the love of his life. As Guadalupe stood there with her young son, she was astonished and exclaimed, "Wow! Augustin! It's been a long time. I thought I'd never see you again after you left me for that wealthy woman. And by the way, where is she, the one who was supposed to be by your side?" At that moment, Augustin replied, avoiding the true reason for their breakup, "Guadalupe. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Our personalities didn't mesh well, and it ended. But now that I'm free, I want to ask you for a chance to be together again, and if we could try again. I assure you this time I won't fail you, and I promise to make it up to you in the best way for all the harm I've caused you." Then Guadalupe replied astonished, "Augustin, have you lost your mind? Don't you know? I'm married now and have a little son, as you can see. Do you think I'm something you can discard and then try to reclaim? Not at all." Very embarrassed, Augustin responded, "Listen, Guadalupe. You've always been the true and only love of my life. What I felt for Rosala was just physical attraction. But my feelings belong to you. Now I have a lot of money. I can give you the life of a true queen, and your son can have the life of a prince. I promise to love him as if he were my own. Since he's yours, I'll take care of this child if necessary. And maybe we can have our own children. Think about it." At that moment, Guadalupe bravely replied, "Listen, Augustin. Have you forgotten everything you told me? How you humiliated me and ended our relationship and all the horrible things you said to me? I cried and begged you not to break up with me. You said I had no future with you and all those awful things you said. I've never forgotten that, Augustin. I've moved on. But I've never forgotten everything you put me through." And at that moment, Augustin replied, still trying to convince Guadalupe, "Listen, Guadalupe. I know I did all that to you. But that's all in the past. Let's try giving ourselves another chance. We can still make things right. Think about it, Guadalupe. You've never really left all these years. I want you back." Finally, Guadalupe delivered her bombshell to Augustin. "Listen closely, Augustin. There is no us anymore. You're already in the past. I'm glad for your fortune. And I'm not for sale. I'm not merchandise that can be bought and then discarded. If there's something I have that you don't, it's dignity, self-love, and strength of will. I'm no longer that naive girl in love. Now I'm a woman who knows what she wants. Unfortunately for you, Augustin, you've wasted your steps and hopes coming here. I wish you all the best. But I wouldn't come back to you even if you were the last man on earth. Be happy with your millions, and I'll be happy with my family." Augustin was completely stunned by Guadalupe's words, realizing the consequences of having disregarded his beloved in the past, and now she was rejecting him. Deep down, he realized his efforts had been in vain. Guadalupe then said gently, "Augustin, it's best if you leave and forget what happened between us. I hope you find someone who loves you as much as I did. Be happy, and God bless you. Please, go because my husband Sebastian could appear at any moment, and it might not end well. Please go. I'll be forever grateful for what I've learned from you. Now leave. Live your life and enjoy the millions you've earned. Please." Augustin, completely humiliated and ashamed, left the agency and headed back to his mansion, realizing the hard way that he had lost Guadalupe forever. Guadalupe, Sebastian, and Sebastian Jr. lived peacefully as a family, filled with happiness and true unity. Meanwhile, Augustin was surrounded by luxury and comfort with his millions, but utterly alone and without the love of his life. Sometimes he would look at Guadalupe's social media and see how happy she was with her husband and child. Mentally, he imagined himself in Sebastian's place, believing he could have been the leader of that family. Unfortunately, all he had left was his wealth, but he was completely solitary, receiving only visits from his family, which was the only thing that still comforted him. Augustin decided to leave Guadalupe out of his life and try to move on, although he continued to miss Guadalupe and the times they were together as a couple. He never managed to forget Guadalupe and deeply regretted not having her by his side. Rosala, on the other hand, remained secluded and reserved, retaining her millions but feeling completely frustrated for being deceived by Augustin, who was the only lover she had ever had. But both lost in love.